Okay, welcome to the final tasting that we're doing for our Fèis Day. I hope you've enjoyed all the 360 films that we put on and the live Q&As. We've had a lot of fun interacting with you out through the day. And just to remind you that if you haven't seen any of these videos that we've been posting, they are going to be on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram going forward. So do go on there and have a look. And if you've got any questions about any parts of the process that we might not have answered during the Q&As, do comment and we'll get back to you probably after the weekend. But the tasting that we're going to do this evening is all about the experimental casks. And now our father's no longer involved in sales and marketing. He's now taken on the...
Taken on? I've been doing it all my life.
Okay, he's been doing it all his life. He's going to do a lot of more interest in the experimental casks. So we're going to taste through 4 of them this evening. And the order that we're going to taste them is the Calvados first, then the Cognac, the STR, and then finish with the Port. And like any other tastings we do, if you've got any questions, do comment on the live stream. And I've got an iPad here that I'll be able to answer all the questions. So I'll hand you over to the main man.
Okay, so I traditionally, obviously, single malt whiskey is matured mainly in bourbon and sherry. That's been the go-to maturation policy throughout the industry, and it's always worked very successfully. But a lot of finishes started to come in 10, 15, 20 years ago. But then I was more interested in trying to do full maturation in different cask types, and never really understanding and knowing how they were going to work out. But fortunately, our spirit character has lent itself to mature pretty successfully in other cask types. And we've filled our spirit into casks from Madeira, rum, port, and red wine casks, and now we've been filling Calvados casks and Cognac casks and other red wine casks. And I'm now more interested in the provenance and tradition of the casks and where they've come from, and if we're allowed to talk about the domain or chateau that the casks have come from, even better. And obviously tequila and mezcal have come on the list of casks we're allowed to fill. So the SWA, the Scots Whisky Association, have relaxed the rules around the cask types that we fill. And so it's great that we're now able to fill other cask types, apart from the ones that were traditionally whiskey has been matured in for many, many years. So Calvados is one of those cask types, and tequila and mezcal and cognac. So tonight it's all about showcasing our spirit in different cask types, and I'm a passionate believer that the cask plays the biggest role in terms of the end whiskey that you'll enjoy in your glass. We're now all talking about different aspects of production and how they influence the character of the spirit and then the whiskey. A lot of that is about pushing your brand and highlighting things. And we do experiments with our barley and barley varieties, and we then put them through the still. And yes, the spirit tastes differently, and we've demonstrated that fairly recently when I did a video with our Sassy barley variety. We put through the stills and also a concerto, and it was striking how different the character of the spirit was. But I think then when it goes through the whole process and into cask, it changes the whole aspect, and the cask take over. There's no doubt the cask will have the biggest influence. But I think it's fascinating for everyone and consumers to understand a bit more of the production process. When you think 40 years ago, distilleries locked their doors. They didn't want consumers in there. It was all very secretive, and no one embraced consumers and the public coming into their distilleries to find out what they did. And I think it's tremendous. In the last 25 years, distilleries have thrown open their doors, and the public have been allowed in to see the whole process. And so the public in general have forced the distilleries to be a bit more open about what they do. And I think it's a great thing that now the distilleries are far more open about the process and what they do to encourage people to maybe drink their particular whiskey. And so we are talking about all sorts of things throughout the process. And we do at Kilchoman, from the barley varieties that we grow, because we're able to control the whole process from growing the barley right the way through to the finished product. And the yeast varieties we use, and the cut points, and all sorts of things, the draining points, the fermentation times, all play a part in the style of spirit that you will end up collecting. But my view is strongly towards the casks that we fill, and how much influence those casks will have to the end product. You have to consider that the whiskey will spend it 10, maybe 15, or even longer in these casks, so they're going to have a huge influence. So tonight, these cask samples that we've selected probably are quite reasonably young, apart from one, the port cask mature, which is the final one I'm going to try, which is 7 years of age. The others are the Calvados, for instance, is only 3 years of age. The Cognac is 4 years of age. Yep. 4 years of age. And the STR is 5 years of age. Yeah. So probably not fully mature and ready to go, but what it demonstrates is that the spirit is the same spirit for every single one. This is commercial malt that we buy from the commercial maltings here on Islay, the 50 parts per million of phenol. So the same spirit spec, the same yeast variety that we use at the fermentation stage, same cut points, right the way through to when we fill the cask at the same strength. And this really demonstrates how different the characters that come through from the different casks.
And do you ever see yourself using our own barley, so the 100% Islay barley, in the experimental casks, or are you looking to only use the Port Ellen malt for the experimental casks at the moment?
I think at the moment, because the percentage that we grow here, and in terms of the total production, is probably only around 20% of our production is from the barley that we grow ourselves. So we've tended to go with mainly bourbon cask maturation, because it really showcases our lighter, more floral character of 100% Islay so brilliantly well. And the experimental cask types have tended to be used for the commercial malt.
Okay, so shall we start with the Calvados cask? The Calvados cask that we're going to be tasting is cask number 356 from 2018, distilled on the 21st of May.
So these casks in Calvados are from friends of ours, actually, the Drouin family that run the Calvados house in that area. You know, they're a small producer. Calvados is really coming to the fore now, and you know, really getting some traction in the market, which is tremendous to see. Calvados was never on the cask types that the Scotch Whisky Association allowed us to fill, and only a few years ago did they change their rules and allow us to fill Calvados casks, and we immediately started to fill them. I had better be careful what I say here, because we obviously probably filled them before they allowed us to, but
we'll gloss over that.
That's not. Now, what I get here is something that's still not ready to go. It's still relatively young. It's slightly alcoholic maybe, but I think on the whole, you're getting from the Calvados cask, and I get it immediately, is this green apple character.
Is that something that you were looking for when you bought the casks, or is that the combination of the cask and our spirit? I
think with any experimental cask type, and these are all were experimental when they were first filled, you're not sure how it's going to work. Yeah. I think I was describing in the last live that we did that the ones that we struggled to get right were the sweet white wine, the Sauternes cask from Bordeaux. And I think it was to do with the lack of acidity in those casks that made the spirit maturing in them not have any structure and balance, and it didn't really lift them up. It sort of, they were all a bit sort of flabby really, and sort of lacking any structure. And these casks, which are fortified wine casks, tend to give it a little bit more structure and backbone.
Okay. And would you use a Calvados cask for a finish, or are you just looking to use them for the full maturations?
We do some finishes as well, and I think we've released some finishes. I'm looking over to my right here to see if we have finished our bourbon barrels, maybe 8-10-year-old bourbon barrels in Calvados casks, and they're available now. I think we've released one or two, and finishes actually work really well, because I think just a small dose of character from the individual casks just lifts it up a bit, changes the character from the bourbon maturation.
But even at, this is at 62.1%.
Right. Yeah.
ABV, and you put your nose in there. For me personally, you are getting the alcohol coming out of there because it is a young whiskey, but it's not as strong as you might expect from that age.
No, I think you would expect something a bit more of an alcohol burn and a bit sharper, but it doesn't have that. I think that's to do with the character of our spirit, which tends to be floral and sweet. What I immediately get is not a huge amount of the Calvados character coming through yet, and I think that would develop over time. It needs probably 2 or 3 or more, maybe 4 more years, I would say. But I have every confidence that this will come on really well at some point in the future.
And when it comes to the experimental cask, I suppose when you talk about the bourbons and the sherries, roughly how long they will take to come of age. When it comes to these experimental casks, is it a case that you have to manage them a lot closer, so you're tasting them more often to see how they behave?
You're going back to them a bit more often and seeing how they're behaving. I think fortified wines or with a higher alcohol strength work better. White wines with an alcohol strength of 12-13%, then you're having to watch them a bit more closely.
So we've got a couple of questions coming in. So if you have got any questions that we haven't covered so far, do fire them in. And one that's come in is your next experimental cask. Is there something that you've got in mind? I know there was some casks that arrived at the distillery that we're filling in the next couple of days that you might want to.
Yeah, we've just bought some Amarone casks from the Valpolicella region of Italy. Yet to fill those. They came in the other day. And we're also filling some Marie fortified wine casks from the Roussillon region of France. So look, I have a lot of fun playing around with this and seeing what works and what doesn't. But we've always and these Marie casks or Maury casks from the Roussillon region, fortified wine. The wine has spent 15 years in these casks, and if you saw them at the distillery today, they're being filled by Robin in the next couple of days. They're absolutely soaked, drenched in red wine. When we emptied them on the floor before we took them into the warehouse to fill, it was this really rich or reddish brick color. So it's going to be interesting to see how those work. And we're continuing that journey. I'm looking to buy more sort of chateau bottled wine casks. Red wine tends to work a bit better than white wine, and I think the third sample we're trying today is red wine, these shaved tasted recharred casks. But getting back to the Calvados, I think the character is showing through. The green apples are there. It's still maybe slightly fainty on the nose, just slightly, and that will be knocked off in the next year or two, and we'll have something really interesting to showcase everybody in the near future.
And you get a bit of that faintiness on the palate as well, and that little bit of dryness I get on the finish there. And is that purely just because it's not quite developed yet, and that you've got the two characters battling away?
And this is why finishes have proved so successful, is that you only give them a short dose in these experimental cask types. So you've fully matured them in a bourbon cask mainly, and then you've finished them for 6-8 months to a year, and therefore you only get a bit of a hit from the cask type, whereas full maturation is a totally different game, and it's all about patience. I think in the whiskey industry, if you're looking after casks, it's all about patience. So when it might be great one day, and if you go back to it in 6 months, it might be all over the place. And you just have the patience to leave it, and eventually it will come around.
Have there been any experimental casks that you've been using that have suddenly either you've looked at one day or 1 year and they're not quite there, and then suddenly it's all clicked together, or they all?
Yeah, I mean, the Sauternes casks were a prime example of something that was all over the place. Then it was good, and I thought, Christ, we'll bottle that in 3 or 4 months, and then it turned the other way, and we had to wait another year or two before it was going to be ready to do anything with. And I'm not sure about the Sauternes. I think they work better as finishes, and maybe there's too much sweet characteristics and a lower alcohol strength that doesn't give it the structure you're looking for.
And when it comes to these cask types, is it just your own experience of maturing whiskey that you rely on for buying these casks, or is there a consultant that you might talk to out there?
No,
it's just you.
Look, I was in the wine trade for 17 years, and I've been in the whiskey industry now 27 years. That shows my age a bit now. So, I've learned and experienced quite a thing, and Jim Swan was the person that really pointed me in the right direction. I learned a huge amount off him through his experience in cask maturation for whiskey. So that's the Calvados, and I think just needs to be left for a bit longer. But this is not about sort of finished products necessarily. It's about showcasing our spirit in different casks and full maturation. I think what everybody knows about finishes, and so they talk about our casks full maturation as finishes, and that's all about just being familiar with finishes. Whereas we've gone down a different route, I think, to most distilleries, and very, very few distilleries, if any, do full maturation in different cask types. But we will continue this journey, and you can always rescue a cask that's not doing any good. You can put it into something else, and you will be able to release it at some point.
Just a couple of questions that we're going to fire at you now about cask type. Are you consider any Normandy cider casks or cider casks in general?
I look, it's like beer casks and cider casks. I think maybe the issue with full maturation those casks is the original strength of those types, which is a low alcohol strength, and maybe it doesn't have that backbone and body you're looking for to really pull out the best in your spirit. But look, I think you might look at those as finishes, but maybe not for full maturation, because I don't think you'll have the structure and the balance that you're looking for.
And you mentioned the SWA, who have recently, in 2018, allowed the Calvados cask. Are there casks that you are eager to fill, that you're just waiting to be given the green light for? Are there certain casks out there? I know we filled tequila and mezcal recently. Are there other casks out there that you're just waiting?
Not really. I think, that relaxation of the rules have allowed us to do pretty much what you want to do now. Yeah. And so Cognac, Armagnac, those two cask types, and Calvados, and maybe other, we've filled Pinot de Charente and Muscadel casks and all sorts of others. But I don't think so, really. I think you have to be careful not to be too experimental. I think what we tend to do is, if it works well, we will fill them again.
Okay.
If it doesn't, we probably won't fill them again. So we will ditch those cask types. But we haven't done that so far.
But we've now got, as we're doing a range of experimental casks, you mentioned other cask types that we've used. What sort of percentage of our warehousing is made up now of the experimental casks? Is it growing slightly, or now we've increased production? Is it remained?
Well, I think
similar?
now that we're increasing production, we can experiment more.
Yeah.
But on the whole, we have to be careful not to be too smart with that. And we know that the backbone of maturation will be bourbon and sherry, and that will continue to be the case. It showcases our releases brilliantly well, but it's fun to be able to release different styles of our single malt, so that people can experiment and taste our whiskey with different maturation.
And a quick one before we move on to the cognac with the Calvados. Is there strength that you would look to bottle that at? I know in previous wine casks you've liked to try and bottle them slightly higher in ABV. Would be the same for that one?
I think there's a reason we reduced to 46%. If I had my way, we'd have them all at a higher strength. But we were able to release more if we reduce it slightly more. So 46% is always the benchmark, because no chill filtration and natural color, hugely important to Kilchoman, and lots of other distilleries now are bottling at that strength. So you don't take the whiskey down to below freezing before you bottle it, to strip out some of the proteins that cause a haze. And we don't add any coloring. All the color is natural from the cask it's been matured in. I think the higher strength for me is I'm passionate about higher strength whiskies, because our whiskey can take it, because it has this sweet floral character straight off the still. And you could argue that 46% is done and dusted. You don't have to add any water. And that if you allowed it to be at a higher strength, like the 100% Islay we bottled at 50%. To be honest, that's more of a point of difference than being too clever and saying it's it's best at 50%. I think our whiskies can take a higher strength, and we are going to introduce a cask strength whiskey to our core range, hopefully next year, because I'm a great believer that cask strength whiskies is the way you should enjoy them. So shall we move on?
We'll move on to the cognac now. So the cognac, just so for reference, for those who like to know the cask number. So this is cask 737 from 2016. And this was from the 29th of August, 2016. Sampled at 58.4% alcohol.
So it has 2 more years of maturation than the Calvados, and the color is deeper and richer. And I think on the nose, it's much more floral and fresher than the Calvados. And that's maybe something to do with the extra 2 years, but maybe not. We don't know really. And I think because we haven't filled cognac casks before, and these were from Cognac Ferrand, who are friends of ours from the Cognac region. They own Plantation Rum brand, and we forged a bit of a union in terms of cask swaps and things, and that's great to see. And they use some of our casks to finish some of their rums, and it really showcases their rums in a different light. And it's great to have these collaborations with other smaller producers. So when I nose and taste this, I get a lot more floral character, sort of richer, the deeper color. So it's 5 years of age. I would say it needs a bit longer. I would like to leave it longer to see how it develops over maybe the next year.
Got amazing mouthfeel to it.
But that's coming on really well. Slight prickle on the end of the tongue, so a little bit of dryness there. And maybe I would say, right at this point, having tasted it tonight, I would say, go back to it, look at it in about a year's time and see where we are. But it's developing really nicely, and it's completely different from the Calvados. Yeah. Obviously, that's a bit younger, but it showcases our spirit in completely different light because of the cask type. And this really demonstrates, the change in character from the different casks that we're using.
And are these all hogsheads, or is with the cognac ones?
These are barriques, so they tend to be 250-litre casks. They're not butts; they tend to be these barrique style casks.
And is that the same for majority of what we're tasting this evening? Or?
This evening, I think they're all in the similar cask types, we tend to use either a cooperage or we go direct. It's always more difficult to go direct because they can't supply very many casks, or they're not wanting to, or they already have a contract with cooperages. So we use a mixture of cooperages or going direct, and it's worked very well for us. And I think the fortunate thing now is more and more different cask types becoming available to the whiskey industry, as they see this as another avenue to supply their casks. So cooperages are being a lot more innovative in their approach to who they're selling their casks to, and the Scotch whiskey industry is one area they're looking at. And so we're getting offered casks from all sorts of different people. We stick very closely to the ones that we know well, and we visit them and see their operation to make sure that the casks that we're getting are genuine.
A similar question that I asked Robin earlier on was: is there anything in the warehouse currently that you're excited to get out there into a bottle? Not
well, I think excited. I think I think the Armagnac casks are interesting. They something that tequila fully matured and mezcal fully matured are going to be very, very interesting to see. I know there's going to be a lot of interest in those casks just because of mezcal and tequila are suddenly on a bit of an upward curve in terms of sales and interest, and certainly in America it's flying, and in Europe I think it's beginning to really catch on. So I can see those cask types being very popular when we get to release them. So but there's all sorts of, but it still represents, I think, what people have got to realize, it still only represents probably 5 to 7 or 8% of our total fillings, and it's key for everyone to realize that we're really, our core expressions are still matured in bourbon and sherry, and it's it's the only sort of limited releases it will ever do in these experimental cask types.
But now there's so much interest from the consumers out there to try these different things. I think they're almost driving the industry to be, push themselves out there and experiment a lot more.
I think consumers now are very well educated in whiskey in general, and there's a huge amount of information out there. And I think, I'd be the first to realize that, social media has played a massive part in getting out there and building our brand without actually having to get on a plane and fly around the world. So, that's right from the word go. 15 years ago, social media was available to us. If we didn't have that, it would have been much more difficult to open up the market to look at a new brand of single malt. But I think the Islay brand has helped us hugely in developing Kilchoman because of Islay's amazing reach around the world, and the big distilleries have made a fantastic job of promoting Islay whiskey.
And then even like today, being able to, we can't have you all here for the tastings, but to be able to do it in some capacity and open the doors has been huge.
I mean, it's been massive. I think when we did it last year, not quite so professional as this year. We've seemed to have ratcheted it up quite a lot this year. I don't think last year when we did it, we'd never thought we'd be doing it again a year later. It's very sad that we can't welcome all the visitors to Islay, because this is a massive week for the island and the locals and the hospitality industry here on Islay. And not to be able to welcome everyone from around the world is very disappointing yet again. And we very much look forward to welcome you all next year. I feel pretty confident that we'll be able to welcome you next year, and it'll be a bumper year next year. We'll be absolutely laying on everything, red carpets everywhere.
You've heard it here. He's promising it now. And just there's a lot of questions coming in, and I'm trying to get through them, but there's a few that are slipping through the net, so I apologize for that. If there is a wine cask that's been maturing, have you ever looked into then taking it out of the experimental wine cask and almost doing it in reverse and putting it back into a bourbon to finish it? Is that something that you would?
We do that when we think they're overcooked. Overcooked meaning they're completely drenched in the characters from the cask it's gone into. We've either forgotten about it or we've been a bit remiss in going and checking them more regularly. We have found a few like that. Robin, often comes and tells me that, we need to look at this cask or that cask because it's been in too long. What we do is then we rescue them by putting them back into maybe a second or third refill that we've got here before we sell those on to the industry. And that rescues it. These casks are more neutral, and they'll just bring it back to what it should be like.
And you mentioned the tequila mezcal casks. How many of those have we got now maturing away, as in full maturations? In
full maturation terms, I think we got about 50 of each. The idea is that we can do a fully matured tequila and a fully matured mezcal in. Well, we'll have to look. We've only filled them in the last couple of years, so it'll be a while before we do a fully mature release. But we're starting off with some finishes, which gives everyone a bit of a teaser as to what's coming on later.
And I mean, they've been hugely popular, the ones that we've released. And just a couple of questions before we move on to the next one. Any barrels that you've considered aging longer, but they've gone slightly wrong? Any regrets? Any cask that you've left in experimental casks that little bit too long that you sort of thought, oh, I should have maybe pulled that?
I think you like every distillery, you might forget about certain casks you filled longer than you wanted to, and maybe didn't check them sooner enough. And you're bound to do that because we got nearly 11,000 casks now, which is a lot of casks to have in the warehouse we've got. Robin, he's amazing with his knowledge of where everything is and what we've tasted and what we haven't tasted and where they all are. He's got an encyclopedic knowledge of that, and he obviously prompts me occasionally to say, look, we need to go and have a look at this because it's it's been in there longer than you wanted it to, probably. I think the Pedro Jimenez casks are the ones that maybe have not caused me issues, but because they're so sweet and full on sherry, maybe they drench your spirit a bit sooner than you'd like, and therefore you have to check those a bit more regularly.
Okay. And last one, before we just quickly move on, rum cask. Any chance for rum cask bottling on the horizon?
Yeah, no, we filled a number of different rum casks, and again, we've done a collaboration with Plantation, Cognac Ferrand, and we've taken in some cask from them, from Jamaica and Trinidad and from Barbados, and we're looking forward to releasing those in the future.
And we sent some casks.
And we sent casks in return. Hopefully we can do another if Alexandra is listening, which he probably isn't. Then we should get in touch, because we haven't done a cask swap recently. But yes, we are doing rum ones, and I haven't talked about that.
Okay,
so we're now moving on to the STR, and this is.
I'll just give them the details so before I forget. So this is cask 207 from 2018, distilled on the 24th of March 2018, and it's still relatively high. So it's 61.5% ABV.
But STR to me is a cask type that works incredibly well with our spirit. You know, when I look at the color, it's extraordinary the amount of color that's come into that already. STR is shaved, toasted, and recharred X. These are ex Portuguese red wine casks, and this was a way of rejuvenating red wine casks, or giving them a different character by stripping the inside off and then shaving, toasting, and recharring them. Different charring levels give a different character. We go for a medium charring. We have actually got casks in the warehouse where we've done a light charring, a medium charring, and a heavy charring, and we're looking at those regularly and see what the difference will be. Very experimental, those ones. You know, we've only filled about 3 or 4 casks of each, but I wanted to showcase those as individual casks going forward to really demonstrate how looking after your casks or doing something slightly different with them showcases the character of your spirit differently. So look, this is only 3 years of age, and it's extraordinarily sort of perfumed and floral and sort of summer fruit character. And we did an STR cask release a couple of years ago. It was about 7 or 8 years of age. But this is 3 years of age and really coming on beautifully. And I think for me, the STR is one of the cask types that's worked really, really well. And I have every confidence, you know, when I buy these casks that they're going to perform. And we work with a cooperage in Portugal, Dias, tremendous people who Jim Swan worked with on this experimental shaved, toasted, and recharred cask. And they've always been provided us with fantastic STR casks, and we've also bought the next cask from them, the port cask from the Ruby port cask. You know, to my mind, you know, that is coming on beautifully well. That's only 3 years of age. Now, when you compare that alongside the Calvados, you know, in terms of character, you know, they're completely and utterly different. And this is why I bang on about, you know, the cask types you use play such a dominant role in the character of the whiskey you end up enjoying. But I think, you know, age to me isn't really, it's just a number. It shouldn't really be portrayed as, you know, it has to be a certain age before it's ready, because every cask will be different in terms of the maturation process and how it develops. With the SCRs here, you know, in a couple of years' time, I'd be more than happy to release that, but maybe we'll leave it a bit longer. We'll see how what other things we've got coming along. And it's never, you know, what you don't want to leave it too long, so that the balance goes completely. But, you know,
I mean, when we released the STR back a few years ago, it was hugely popular, wasn't it? And
I still think this needs a bit more time, but it's coming on beautifully well, and it's got this lovely floral sort of fruity character. So I call it summer fruits because it's that light floral character that I love. But at the back of the palate, you have those smoky sort of maritime notes coming through as well. And so it's all developing really nicely. And, you know, it really goes back to how the consumers have changed their views on single malt. And 10 years of age always used to be the benchmark, and you could never drink any single malt under 10 years of age. I think those perceptions have changed, and I think people are more open to trying things which are a little different. And we certainly understand that age statements do play a part, but we're looking to change people's perceptions and try our whiskies because we've decided that they're ready to release, and maybe there's no age statement on them, but we try and give as much information as we can. either on the label or the packaging or on the, is it the QR code or something? QR code on the back, where you can pick up all the information about the vatting that we put together. But I'm absolutely thrilled with the STR. I think it's one of the cast types that's really shone through for us, and we're hoping to add it to our core range in the next 2 or 3 years. We're starting to fill a lot more. Every year we fill a lot of STR casts, more than any other experimental cast type, and so that we will be able to release more on an annual basis.
Yeah, lots of positive comments about the STR, especially I think given the fact it's the age of it.
Yeah.
With these, the sort of building a relationship with the cast supplier, is that something that takes a long time? I know we've worked with Buffalo Trace since 2007, and when it comes to setting up that relationship, is it a case of reputation of your spirit, or is it just having a good conversation with them?
Well, to be fair, Jim Swanham was the one who set me up with my first contacts, and Buffalo Trace weren't willing to sell to us when we first started. Jim Swan put us in touch, and we didn't have a track record, and so they didn't really want to. They wanted to see that we had a track record before they did business with us, but they did. And then Jose Miguel Martin in Spain with all our Oloroso, all our sherry casks come from him. And for me, it's the consistent character that comes from these casks is hugely important. And then cooperages that we've worked for our experimental cast types or gone direct. It's either relationships I've built up myself or through other contacts. And Jim sadly isn't with us anymore, so I can't lean on him for contacts. And I learned so much from him. I'm reasonably confident that we can source casts. And now that Kilchoman has a small reputation and we're building the brand, people, maybe cast suppliers are more likely to come and look for us than we're going out to look for them.
And when it comes to selecting which of these casts, the experimental casts, go for bottling, is it a committee or is it just on your shoulders that falls on? I mean, I can answer that question, but I'll let you answer it.
I don't like committees.
No, there we go.
And look, I mean, Robin works with me, and I'm looking to make sure he's trained up and understands. And he does. I mean, Robin, he's come on leaps and bounds in terms of understanding different cast types and what they should be tasting like. And every time I ask him to go and get casts, and we go through them together, and he has a great understanding of what's maturing and how they're coming along. So, at the moment, I make the final decision on all our battings.
We know that.
And Robin plays a part in that because it's key that other people are involved in that. And I'm keen for anybody who's interested to get involved to a certain extent, but it's always difficult to get. So Robin and I tend to do that together.
No, but I think he is. I mean, he started with us. What was it? 11.
2010. Robin started as a part-time stillman. He was farming, counting geese and things like that. And he helped his father on the farm, and he still farms. His first love is farming. There's no doubt about that. He came part-time because that just added to his income. And then in 2017, 15, 16 or 17,
I can't remember.
He went full-time before that. And then, very sadly, our distillery manager passed away, John McClellan, who everyone will know well from Bunnahabhain days. And he joined me in 2009 as the distillery manager. Fantastic guy, who'd been in the industry many, many years. He sadly passed away in 2014. So, and then we kept going, and then Robin was appointed, and he's been the production manager ever since. And
now with increasing production, there's a lot more management as far as the staffing in the still house with the new still house as well, and then also the increased in production with the casks.
Well, he now has 13.
Yeah.
13 members of staff in production, which includes the still house and malt floor and warehousing. So he has 13 people. So he has a lot on his plate, and he tends to look after the sort of all the warehousing and making sure all the production is done correctly, and then all the vattings. He's heavily involved in the vattings, and we're doing more of those on a regular basis.
No, and just a question came in about Jim Swan. I mean, Jim Swan was instrumental especially in the early days of setting up everything from cut points to shapes of stills, etc. And as I can remember now, when you opened the New Start in 2019, there was that sort of worry. But I suppose then you'd built up enough experience, not just yourself, but also with Robin, etc. But Jim was instrumental in all that from 2004 onwards.
There's no doubt that without his input, we wouldn't have got where we are now. And he had a massive role to play in where we've got to, and I wouldn't have been able to succeed without him. I think then, you build up your own experience. Having been in the drinks industry all my career, you have a certain amount of knowledge, but he had absolute bucket loads of it. So he passed that on. And when we built the new still house, it was obvious. He always told me that, if you're going to expand, then you just need to make sure you build the same stills and you don't try and be too clever and change things and do everything the same. You want to produce the same spirit character. And then the experimental stuff with yeast varieties and barley varieties, it's very much been my sort of input there, but driven by Jim in the original days and telling me about the different characteristics come from different yeast varieties and certainly from cask types. He used to come over here every 3 months in the first 3 or 4 years, and we'd go through the warehouse, taste from different ages, different cask types, and he'd showcase things to me that I've sort of put away in my folder in my head. So,
and
I'm not senile yet.
We would never say such a thing. No. And earlier on, Michal was asking when he might expect his new labelling machine. Last year, you promised him a new filling machine that he now is expecting delivery of. And requesting now he's got some new ideas.
Was he asked that question?
Well, it's come in here.
That's rubbish. That's come from Catherine. No, he's not getting a labelling machine. Okay. I'm just forked out for a 9-head automatic filling head. I mean, there's always something else, isn't there?
Yeah, this is very true.
So we'll have to see how we go. We've just invested hugely in the bottling room. We've now fully automated, or will be in the next few weeks. They've worked incredibly hard in there to keep up with demand, and it's been difficult. But I'm always a great believer that you only move to the next stage when you're on your back and you can't actually cope. So he's getting his automatic filling head. He's got a case erector, and he's got an automatic labelling machine, and he can make do with that for a bit. And he's got 2 new members of staff as well, because we are also putting in a very small, with the existing machinery that's coming out of the existing line, we're having a single cask line as well. So we're having a second line. It sounds all very fancy, but it's not. That will just take the pressure off the main line where we put down Maki Bay and Saneg. Maki Bay and Saneg still represent 60-65% of our total volume sales, and therefore we need another line to put all these experimental and single casks, which take a lot of effort to label and number the casks. All the labels are numbered by hand. We're keen to keep that going, because I'm a great believer that not many distilleries do single cask bottlings, because it's a faff. It takes a lot of time and effort, and we want to continue doing it. Michal, who runs bottling, it's a huge amount of extra work for him to organize all that, but it really pays off for us to be able to do that as well.
And I think especially over the last year, having our own bottling line and being able to continue to fulfill orders has been massive for us, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think when lockdown happened in March 2020, every company around the country, whether it was a distillery or any other company, was afraid for what might happen going forward. And, we were no different from everyone else. But fortunately, things have worked out pretty well. But we stayed at the distillery. 6 of us stayed at the distillery bottling. James, my other son, and Kathy, my wife, and a few others from the distillery, 6 of us in total, carried on bottling for 3 months. It drove us bloody crazy, bottling for 3 months. But we did that. The whole of the rest of the staff went home, were furloughed, and it paid off, because I think, I was doing a Zoom the other morning with our New Zealand distributor, Whiskey Galore in Christchurch, and they commented how grateful they were that they were still able to place orders with Kilchoman and get the products, whereas a lot of companies just shut down altogether. and weren't sending out orders. And I think, I don't understand it myself, because if you're able to do it, you just get off your backside and do it. If you're the MD of a company, well, roll up your sleeves and get in the bottling. And that's what we did. And I think it pays off to do that. And I think smaller companies were able to react a bit more quickly than larger companies. And certainly I would say that the smaller to medium-sized companies in the whiskey industry have certainly come through it pretty well. But if you're a large company, then obviously when you have two parts of your sales shut down completely, duty-free and the on-trade, then that's a very difficult business to replace. But, being a small company, we weren't exposed too badly. So, it's been, we've had a good time in terms of sales, and we hope that will continue.
Quality sales team you've got in place.
Well, I have a sales marketing team that don't involve me anymore in decision-making process, apparently.
Gets very upset about it.
I've just been put out the grass, but I haven't gone out the grass quite yet.
No, you're still there.
No,
We wheel you out occasionally, just for these big moments.
Yeah, these big moments, because obviously tonight...
Yeah, the viewing numbers are through the roof just because you're here. So I think we'll go on to the port.
Yeah.
And also mention that we'll be tasting the face bottling at the end there.
Yeah.
We sent them out before, like the packs, so that I imagine many of you have got them in front of you this evening. So we'll be tasting them, talking you through that at the end there. But the fourth round that we can taste is the port cask, and we've done a few different port casks before releases, haven't we? And this is from 2014.
Yeah, this is now 7 years of age, and what a wonderful sort of I would call that sort of rosé color almost. Yeah. Ruby port cask, so the younger sort of richer port style, and these are from obviously from Portugal, from our cooperage there, our friends Dias, who've supported us really superbly well over the last sort of 15 years. And I think we've done a port cask. We did one at 3 years of age when it was in 2017 or 4. Earlier than that. So
2014.
So I think in 2014. So we filled them in 2011. Yeah, if my maths is right. 2011, and then we filled some more,
and we bought some
in 2014.
This is a fresh one from 2014. Yeah. So I think what happened, we refilled the refills, and then we've done another release of the port, but then we also bought some fresh port casks that we've laid down for slightly longer now.
Slightly longer, and I think this is really coming to the party. I think that a lot of people ask me, do you prefer a particular experimental cask, or do you prefer it in bourbon or sherry? And if I have to be completely honest with you, and I think people know this who've spoken to me before, that I love the bourbon cask maturation, because it showcases there's no hiding place in bourbon in terms of sweetness and aroma and spice. Bourbon, is a light floral character, butterscotch, caramel, whereas other cask types can sort of be quite dominating. This isn't dominating, but it's a different character. Do I love it? I think it's come together really well. It's a beautiful nose.
For me, it's amazingly fresh still for something that's been in the port for that length of time. I think when I initially looked at this and I thought port from 2014, I thought it might be, on that more on the red fruit style, but it still retains that amazing freshness.
Sort of red fruit style, but it's got this sort of slight prickle on the end of the tongue. But to me, that's really nice dram, and sort of something that we should be considering bottling in the next year or so. And I think it's such fun to be able to taste all these together, because they're completely different Kilchoman styled whiskies because of the casks they've been matured in. And they really are completely opposite from the Calvados, which definitely needs more time. The Cognac, which is coming on really nicely, it's got a lot of floral character, no real sort of fainty or off notes there. And the STR, to me, if I'm looking at this and sort of saying which is my favorite, I think the STR comes out because I just love that sort of light floral fruity character that the STR, these shave taste and recharge casks, give to our style of spirit. And the port, to me, that's looking really good as well. So I hope you enjoyed those.
And just to confirm, that's a Ruby port. Do we fill any tawny ports at all? Or
we filled some tawny port and some vintage port casks. but we've only done that in the last few years, so they're a bit a way off releasing.
I think with the podcast as well, I know that Matty from Peter Moore, this is one of your favourite bottlings that we do. Peter Moore, who shares a huge amount of imagery with us, and we're hugely grateful for that. And he's been looking forward to this. So hopefully you're enjoying the tasting, and especially the podcast matured that I know that you particularly enjoyed. Another question that comes in here is about the SWA and the transparency on the bottle labels.
Yeah.
Do we have any issues with that? I think this is when it comes to age statements, casks, etc.
I think yes. I mean, I think we've had our knuckles rapped a few times by the SWA, quite rightly, when we talk about the vatting on the back label of a carton, where we talk about it's a vatting of 6, 7, and 8-year-old. Well, we're not allowed to talk about the 7 and 8-year-old. We're only allowed to talk about the 6-year-old. So, it's something that we would like them to consider, that we can give more information on the label and talk about the vatting of the whiskies that we've used. We're not persuaded them yet that that's something they're going to give into, but with the QR codes that we have on our back labels, you're able to tap your phone on there and get that information. And I understand the frustration of consumers that this isn't allowed to be done, but I'm a great believer the SWA are there to uphold the integrity of the Scotch whiskey industry. And I think you only have to look at sort of rum and gin and see that, the regulations are fairly lax, and therefore you get away with more. And I think with the whiskey industry, you know what you're getting, and you know what you're having. I think, though, that times have moved on from when the regulations were set, and they have moved the goalposts recently with obviously the casks that we can use. And maybe in the future we can start talking a bit more about the vatting of the different casks that we've used and the age profile, because I think we're getting away a bit more from the age statement. We're still, I understand the age statements are there for a very good reason, but we aren't necessarily going to go down that route. But when we do a limited release of our Loch Gorm, we put the bottling date and the distillation date on the label, and then we talk about what we've used there. So we're starting to be able to discuss that more, but it's still something that will. It's a bit away, I think, before we're able to really talk about the vattings on the labels.
Before we move on to the Fèis bottling there, so just quickly so that people are aware. Now you've tasted these samples before, but how's that now set a plan of when these might be bottled, the STR and the port, for example? We know you mentioned the.
I think the port we could look at bottling that in the next year or two.
Yeah.
The STR I'd like to leave a bit longer, but it's really unbelievably developed at 3 years of age. I'd like to leave the cognac another 2 or 3 years, and the Calvados probably another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And from that tasting there, that would be my view at the moment. But look, things change.
Yeah.
So we'd go back to these in a year's time, and I might change my mind because things have developed differently than I thought.
And with the Ruby port there, you mentioned that we've got some vintage port in casks in the warehouse. Do they differ hugely, or do they follow a similar?
They're a slightly older style of port. So Ruby port is youngish port that's released. So there's more going on there. Vintage port will be a bit more rich and fruity, and may take a bit longer to develop.
And the port cask, the Ruby port cask that we got there, how many litres are they? Are they similar to the?
Yeah, they're barracks as well. Okay. Yeah, they're barracks as well. You do get these port pipes, which are bigger than butts, but we've not had any of those.
And is that the larger the cask, the longer the maturation takes?
Yeah,
is that
so
the general?
More. Smaller the cask, more wood contact, and therefore mature a bit quicker. So, the butts and pipes will take longer to mature.
Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to give you a bit of a tasting of the Fèis release that we've done here. You and Robin put this together.
Yeah. So this is from the flagship expression. This is from our own barley that we grow and malt and mature. We're this is the flagship expression as far as I'm concerned. It's sort of single farm, single malt, and there are not many distilleries that do this, and we're very proud of the fact that we do the whole process on site. So this is actually a vatting of 6 bourbon barrels from 2012. and two
Two.
Oloroso sherry butts from 2011.
Yeah.
And we've added these together. So these are lightly peated. You know, those who've tasted 100% Islay in the various 10 editions that we've released, you know, will know it's a sort of lighter and more floral character. I always describe it as our breakfast dram. I was doing the tasting the other morning at 8 o'clock, and we were tasting 100% Islay. Perfect time to drink a dram of 100% Islay. We tended to do the 100% Islay with mainly bourbon maturation, but in the last year or two, we've added a bit of Oloroso sherry. It gets a bit more depth and weight and color, you know, and this has a lovely color. So I think I'm right in thinking this is, was it 11 or 10 years of age? 10 or 11 years of age?
10 years of age.
10 years of age. And I think, you know, bottled at
56.3.
56.3,
2,832
bottles. And we released this in the back end of April, I believe. And that was all about getting the bottles out to people prior to the festival day. Normally, we release the bottles on our festival day, and only people who turn up at the distillery get to buy a bottle. And we're going to keep that tradition going. But obviously, in the last 2 years, we've made them available online. Now, you know, this to me is 100% Islay at its best. You know, I like the combination of bourbon and sherry. I like bourbon on its own with 100% Islay because it just has this lovely sort of lemon citrus, but light floral character. Peat is there, but very, very distant peat. It's 10 to 20 parts per million of phenol, so very lightly peated, as against the peat that we use, the malt that we buy from commercial maltings, which is 50 ppm. And what I like is that the 100% Islay character is lighter and fruitier, as against the Port Ellen malt, which is a little bit richer and more profound in terms of the peating character.
And when you talk about single farm, single malt, what we're saying there is at Kilchoman, we've got the farm there, and we are growing our own barley, and that barley is not leaving Islay, and it's grown on the farm before being malted, distilled, matured, and bottled.
Yeah.
And I think it's
stunning. This is stunning bottle, 56.2, no alcohol burn whatsoever. It's lovely, rich, and floral. There's a spiciness on the back of the palate that I pick up, but it's maritime in character, but it doesn't have a lot of peatiness on the back of the palate, and you don't nose that, but it's just got this wonderful balance. And at 56.2% alcohol strength, you need very little water. I mean, I really do recommend this. I mean, I know it's very limited, and I know markets couldn't get it because of the issues over Brexit and being able to post bottles around. So we do apologise for that, but there's very little is out of our hands in terms of who could get their hands on a bottle. But, you know, to my mind, this is 100% as it should be at prime maturation, and it doesn't need a lot more than that. So it's a wonderful, wonderful dram, and we're delighted that we've been able to share that with a few people anyway. And sorry that those who tried to get a bottle couldn't get hold of one.
But no, I think I completely agree that it's a stunning dram, and it'll be nice to be able to welcome everyone back to Islay.
Yeah, we look forward to welcoming you all back next year and having a big party, because I think that's what you all deserve, and we'd love to have you back here. And when you're able to visit us, do come over and say hi. We'd love to show you around and see all the improvements that we've made at the distillery. Certainly since you were last here, there's a huge amount of work that's gone on, and you've probably seen that with the various videos, the 360 videos you've seen today. And look, I hope you've enjoyed the day.